I am.
Okay. Good morning and welcome to another edition of Badass Marketing. I am joined once again by the most fabulous co-host, Angela Dunz. Angela, how are you?
I'm good this morning. It's sunny. It's a good it's a good week.
It is. It is. If memory serves me right, and at my age we do need to check, uh, we are going to talk about SEO today.
Yes, and I'm so excited about this conversation. I absolutely love this conversation.
Yeah, so, get your coffee, get settled, all that. This should be about a 12-hour video.
An advanced course.
Exactly. No, we're not going to get that crazy. We will keep it to a reasonable time, but there is so much to talk about and so much to discuss. So let's just jump right in. Angela, where do you want to start?
Well, I think the best place to start is, there's so much confusion out there in the marketplace about what SEO is and what it can do for you when it's working well. So let's first of all define what are we talking about SEO and where are we going to focus our efforts on? Because SEO is a little bit different on different platforms.
Yeah, so SEO is really about creating awareness and visibility. So SEO obviously is search engine optimization. Most of the conversation that I will have, unless we are, talking about something that's platform specific, will be about websites and typically our own websites. And what can we do from an optimization perspective to make our site more findable? We realize that Google commands somewhere between 85 and 90% of the search market. So obviously we're very in tune and very sensitive to what Google is looking for. But there's other things out there that are important as well in other places. But for the most part, we have Google, in the forefront when it comes to optimization and what we think Google likes today. And I say today because it's forever changing and moving. But optimization really is about making little tweaks to your website so that it's findable. There are lots of areas that we can do this. Obviously, within your content, we can focus on keywords. So if you want to be found for cats or cat butts, you would want to make sure that cat butts are in your content, right? We're not talking about abusing that, so we're not saying, which is keyword stuffing where we overuse it. But, Google looks at, if you are talking about a topic, what would the frequency of that keyword be in your natural language? And, it's somewhere around 3 or 4%. So that's what we're going to look for. We're also going to do things like make sure that there's consistency. So for instance, if you are right, we'll change the topic to just cats. But if you are writing about cats, what we would look for is that the title of the article has a keyword cat in it, that the content itself has keywords that are cat related in it, that your meta description and your URL have the word cat in it somewhere. If you have images, we would assume that some of the alt tags, which are the descriptors for the images, would have that. So it's looking for consistency, because what it doesn't understand is if you have an article titled about cats and then you start talking about dogs, right? There's a disconnect. So it's not enough to just simply, get the title right. You need to have consistency throughout the the content and the other areas such as pictures and images and meta tags. So, and what this allows Google to do is to understand what you're talking about and to make sure that it's consistent. Then Google is going to look at some other factors and, such as, do other cat pages, link to you as a resource, which gives you some authority, right? Because obviously if other cat lovers love what you're talking about, there is, validation that you must be a cat expert. So we're going to be looking about, internal links, external links, things like that, that Google also uses for signaling to understand whether or not this is, valuable content.
So I'm going to stop you and ask a question just for
Sure.
our readers' sake. So I know what meta
Listeners, our
tags.
listeners. I don't think anybody's reading this, but go ahead.
You're absolutely right. Oh, So for our listeners, could you explain a meta tag and how important meta tags are?
Yeah, I mean, so, Google basically looks at what you've presented. So Google doesn't understand, or it's a computer, right? So it's an algorithm. So, if you post a picture of a horse, and while this is changing because of AI, pretty much Google has no idea what it's looking at because it can't see. So we will use something like an alt tag to say, Google, this is a picture of a horse. And Google's like, okay, so if somebody queries horse, we're going to present this image because you have told us it looks like a horse. So the meta tags are sort of the descriptions that go into the header of your article or your post or your website that tells us what we're talking about. So, the description is, this is an article about cats. It will have a title tag which says, look, like we said, cat article. And then, it will have, the URL. And then hopefully the URL has been customized so that it has something related as well for the keyword. And these are just
Awesome.
additional signals to Google to tell Google what you're writing about.
And meta tags are not just for pictures. Where else do they go?
Well, again, what they are is they go into your header tags or go into your header. So this is the code that at the top of any page. So if you right click and say, look at code, you can look at the meta tags. So we typically will use the title tag, the description tag, and then there's a URL. So typically title tags and description tags help further clarify what it is that this article is about.
So it is both things that are visible and kind of behind the scenes.
Yeah, it's, again, what it's about is consistency. So the article is written with content that's related, and then the meta tag and the title tag and the image alt tags all are consistently signaling this is still about cats.
Fantastic. I think that makes it much more clear.
What's your next question about SEO?
So, when SEO is working really well, what is that going to do for me?
Well, I mean, when SEO is working really well, it increases the visibility or the likelihood that Google is going to rank you higher. And we all know that the higher you rank on Google, the greater likelihood that people are going to see you. There is, the second page of death, and I would suggest it's not even the second page, it's beyond the fold. So if you do not appear at the top of a Google search result, people don't, as a rule, unless they're looking for something very specific, have a tendency to scroll down or page through, additional responses. So it's really important that you do whatever you can to rank as high as possible on Google so that there's a greater likelihood that you will show up in a result.
Right. Yes, we've become super lazy. We don't look past like the top three.
That, and we also are sort of, we've become desensitized to ads. So we look right past the ads and go right to the organic. So, there's really a limited amount of real estate in which we can appear. What's even more challenging is that Google has continually over the years reduced the size of that real estate. So it used to be that you could get 10 to 12 different responses. Last time I checked it, somewhere around 7, depending on the topic. And then the other thing that's starting to happen is Google is like every other website in the world. When you land on our webpage, we're going to do everything we can to keep you there. We don't want you to click off. So despite the nature of Google, Google actually doesn't want you to ever leave Google. So what we're starting to see is that Google is giving you more and more information that will answer your response so that you never even have to leave Google. And this is really where AI is starting to come in, and Google's use of AI is to start answering the questions that you have on Google, which is going to make it more and more challenging to be found through search because Google is going to use more and more of their own real estate to keep you on a Google product.
So I think this would be a really good time for me to ask the burning question. So everybody's talking about Chat GPT, and everybody's all freaked out about how Chat GPT is going to change search. So let's hear what you have to say about how is it going to affect search, and what is the difference between searching on Chat GPT and searching on Google these days?
Well, those are two different questions. So you may
Let's
need
go
to
for the
prompt me
first
to
one.
make sure. Yeah, you may need to prompt me so I remember what the second question was.
Yes.
But I think that there is a lot of good news and bad news when it comes to search and AI, right? I think that, the AI tools, Chat GPT as an example, are great resources for us to create content and to create, it probably writes better than most of us. And we're using that as sort of our foundation for creating our articles and creating our content. Um, it it doesn't always spit it out in a format that is the best, so we probably need to go back and edit it. The danger with Chat GPT, and we've done this and seen it, is that it gives you a response based on the information it have, and that does not mean, as because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's right, and because it's on Chat GPT doesn't mean it's right. So if you're relying heavily on Chat GPT, there's a very good possibility that despite all good intents, the information we provide is just wrong.
Yeah.
So we need to sort of read it, double check it, fact check it, whatever you need to do, because simply using Chat GPT doesn't guarantee that the information that's being presented is correct. So that's one aspect. Another aspect is, as I mentioned, Google is interested in this, and Google has announced and said it plans to use this. It plans to use this in its in its responses to yours. And what Google wants, and ideally, the ultimate AI tool is sort of a natural language, like I'm having a conversation with you the way we are right now. So you ask me a question, and I answer it. And that's what Google and AI ultimately wants to be able to do, is you can ask a question and it gives you a response in a language that you understand. It's not overly technical. It doesn't route you to 12 different websites. It basically answers the question you asked. And Google's idea is, that will all happen within the Google search page. You don't need to leave. So the challenge for folks in the SEO industry and folks who are trying to market themselves is that it's going to be harder and harder to get folks and eyeballs to your website. So in previous episodes, we've talked about, you really are going to need an omni-channel approach, because if you're going to rely solely on Google, I think you're going to see over time that resource isn't going to deliver the way it might have in the past. What was
That's
your
awesome.
second part? What was part two?
The second part was actually, I can't remember because I have another question that's a little bit more
See, that's
burning
why
than
we
that
have
one.
to,
I'll
break
get
these
back to.
down.
So because the competition is so tough out there to get eyeballs on your website, can you talk just a little bit about how important and how often you need to get fresh content on your website?
Yeah. We have said this. I don't know if this is politically correct or not, so I'm trying to think of a better way to phrase this, but for lack of that effort, we're content whores, right? There is no such thing as too much content. And there's,
I love it
because
when you say that. I love it when you say that.
yeah, because the reality is the more that I can throw out on the wall, the greater likelihood that one of them is going to stick. So, I don't think you can produce too much content. I've never said, heard of anyone like, oh, we produced too much content and Google wasn't happy because we had too much content. However, too much content can obviously overwhelm your readers. Too much content can, if you're sending them a newsletter every 2 hours, yes, that's not going to work. So obviously you need to moderation when it comes to knowing your audience, knowing what they want, and knowing where you're going to deliver it. I think at a minimum, we're talking weekly that you need to be in front of them. You and I have talked in the past and on here, as well as other places, that you need to be top of mind, which means you have to just be out there and in front of them. our website, we make it a point to post daily. We have in the past posted 10 articles a day daily, and we have recently reduced that to 2. And that has nothing to do with search. It has to do with bandwidth, which is like 10 articles a day is a lot of articles. And, having gone from 10 to 2, we've definitely seen a decrease in the amount of traffic because we're just producing less content. However, it's not, oh my God, like it's not 80% less, it's half. So, we're producing 80% less content and still, the drop is only about 50%. So, the challenge there is there's just, so many hours in the day and we can only
There's
produce
some
so much.
efficiencies
Yeah.
in there that
So
have to be reached.
yeah, so we just, we reduce the amount of content that we're producing, but it's fine. We also have, while reducing the amount of content posting on our site, we're doing other things, a podcast where we're chatting and talking, and we're at meetings. So again, we're falling back more on a more diverse omni-channel approach than relying solely on content on one platform, which is our website.
Right. So I have heard that there is a component of SEO that's called density. So, words are really light fare, but things like video and podcasts are a little bit stickier. Can you talk about that piece of the SEO puzzle?
Yeah, I don't know if that's SEO or if that's just consumption, right? Because it's a preferred channel of how we like to consume content. It doesn't get any more passive than watching a video, right? So, if you have a choice between reading an article that is 1,200 words or watching a 3-minute video, which is probably the same equivalent, right? Most people are going to pick the video. So it's really, I think that's more about consumption and preferences when it comes to consumption. Very often, for instance, in this podcast, we will post the video, we will post the audio, and we will post the text. So, we don't need to try to figure out how you like to consume. We don't want anyone to try to figure that out. We can't. We just give you all the options and you'll figure it out. So we give you the visual, we give you the audio, and then we give you the written text, and whatever works for you is fine.
And that's a great point because we all like to consume things in a little bit different way. Some people are really addicted to podcasts. And so the audio is what they're looking for while they run or while they commute or whatever it is that they're doing. So yeah, the diversity has to be a factor in this from the human point of view. Does it have anything to do with the back end, the SEO point of view?
I mean, I think where that is going to come into play is depending on where you're hosting your podcast or your video. YouTube is a Google product, right? So YouTube is by nature the fact that it's a Google product going to rank higher because it's going to promote its own products. So, if I'm going to post a video, I'm likely going to get more hits on YouTube than I would on my personal website. However, again, with the omni-channel approach, I have the ability to embed that content. So first thing I do is I post it on YouTube, right? Then I take that and I post it on Spotify or some sort of podcast platform, and then I embed that on my website. So that again, I leave the option of where do you want to consume up to the audience. You want to watch it on YouTube, it's there. You want to listen to it on Spotify, it's there. You want to watch it on our website, it's there as well. I think for SEO purposes, the platform itself has its own ranking, and therefore, your video on YouTube may rank higher than the video on your website.
So let's talk about this whole omni-channel approach. Now, if you have a YouTube channel, if you have a website, if you have things on Spotify, if you're on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, does that help increase your search rank?
I think what it does is, well, the answer is yes, because, what we will do is on YouTube, we're going to provide text explaining the video because, again, YouTube can't watch the video. So we have to tell it what it is. That text will contain links back to our website, so that'll be an inbound link to our website, giving our website more credibility. So that's an SEO tool. Same thing on Spotify. We're going to embed a link. We're going to embed a link on any of those other social platforms. And then it really is going to come down to, is this the appropriate platform for the content that you're sending out to the audience? For instance, most of our content goes to LinkedIn and not to Facebook because it's a different audience. So we attempt to try to put it where we think the audience is. But yes, it increases, by putting it on those platforms and then using a link in the description below, that gives us the ability to provide some inbound links to our own website, and that increases our SEO and our credibility with Google.
So as long as we're talking about links, I kind of come from the coaching world, and there are lots of people out there that say that they're going to get you found by the right people with a link strategy. Can you address that just for a second?
Yeah, I mean, so linking is a tool within SEO that we use. It's not the only tool, but it is a tool. And Google likes links, Google expects links, and what it allows you to do, and it's really a question of where is the link coming from, because the better the source of the link, the better the credibility. So, if you link from Bob's website, which has 0 traffic and 0 ranking, it's not going to give you a lot of credibility. If you, have a link from National Geographic, like, oh, that's a pretty credible, prominent publication. And if you get a link from their
Forbes article.
Yeah, I'm going to hesitate on that one, because
Please explain. I want to hear this.
Okay, but let me finish my thought and then remind me to go back to the Forbes. But National Geographic, or some sort of credible publication, or something like that, those have more value because if you get a .gov or a .edu, if Harvard says, "Oh my God, this guy's brilliant," if Harvard says I'm brilliant, I must be brilliant. So part of is the what is the credibility and value of the source that's linking to you. I sort of cringed a little bit when you said Forbes, because Forbes has recently, or maybe not so recently, really adopted a pay-to-play publication format. So I don't know how, it's still a known name, and so you're going to definitely get credibility. I'm sure it gets plenty of traffic. But I don't know, it's surely not the credibility of a Harvard, surely not the credibility of, a publication that doesn't do that. Like I said, pretty much anybody can post on Forbes.
Significantly diluted.
Yes. That was my hesitation when you mentioned Forbes. Yeah.
Well, and that's important for our listeners to know, is it worth paying to play? And probably not. It's much better to get invited to publish on a platform.
Yeah, but that's not always an option. So sometimes it is important to do. What's important, I mean, the answer is that it's not a question of yes or no. It's about trying things and measuring whether or not they work. If you find a publication strategy on Forbes that works for you and it drives traffic, then it's doing what it needs to do. And the bottom line is, whatever you do, measure it and figure out whether it's working. If it's working, keep doing it and do it more. If it's not working, then find another platform, find another vehicle, use another tool. But for us, anything, whether it's a linking strategy, whether it's content strategy, it's really about measuring whether it's working. So try it. Forbes could be a great place if it's driving traffic to your website, but you only will know that is if you measure the response. So you need to know a way to identify where the source is. So, we'll look to what was the inbound link? Where did it come from? Did we do anything, or did they magically reach out to us, or did we post a publication and therefore we expect the link back? But measure where your traffic is coming from, and we can do that through Google Analytics or a whole bunch of other tools to really understand where our traffic comes from, and then we can look at our efforts and seeing is what we're doing and where the traffic is coming from. Do they correlate, or is it they're we're doing something over here and we're getting traffic from over there and there's a disconnect? So we need to understand that.
Yeah, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway because it is a slightly different application of this whole links. When I started my career, in LinkedIn consulting 10 years ago, there were a lot of people that were really pushing affiliate relationships. And what that meant to them was, your website is going to be listed on my website as a resource for people because we're in similar no compete territory for, market share. So can you speak just a tiny bit? What I'm thinking is it's again going to be the quality of the site and the number of people who actually land there for whatever reason. But
Yeah, I don't think the answer has changed from our last question. It really is a function of where are they coming from, what's the reputation of that particular site. The likelihood is, you know, the affiliate links, if they drive traffic and they work, that's a good thing, right? If you're paying and you're not getting any traffic, you're wasting money. So again, the bottom line, cut to the chase. If it works for you, keep doing it. But make sure that you're measuring, make sure that whatever effort you're taking, you follow up and to see, is that driving an outcome? I don't have I'm not particularly pro affiliate, but I'm not negative affiliate. It's a function of whether it works for you. So, the biggest problem I have is that many people will try things and not know whether or not they work because they don't bother to go look at the metrics, right? And then it's like, oh, well, I'm not getting traffic. And it's like, well, what are the metrics telling you? And, the other aspect of that is it could work. Maybe your messaging wasn't right. So maybe it's not the fault of the affiliate. Maybe maybe it's a question of figuring out your messaging so that it resonates with your audience. So there are so many factors that contribute to that it's you just can't say affiliate is good or affiliate is bad. You have to look at all the various factors and then based on that, make some tweaks, figure it out, try something else. We're big fans of A/B testing. Try two different things and see which one. Is it red or is it blue? They like blue. Do you take the red pill or the blue pill? Some folks will pick red, some will pick blue. But you won't know unless you try and you give them choices.
Right. Well, and with so many things, one of the things that I see is that people just give up too quick. They don't measure, number one. And number two, they want instant results. And it takes time to build these things. So expecting instant results is probably not the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, SEO is a long-term play. Pretty much everything we ever discuss is a long-term play. Sorry about that. There just are no magic bullets to being online. If there were, there'd be a lot more successful people doing it than the rest of us who are out here struggling trying to figure it out. This is a long-term play. You have to try it, make some mistakes, learn from your mistakes. But again, the only way you're going to learn from your mistakes is if you're tracking the metrics.
So let's talk about the dynamic nature of SEO. It's not the same game next week as it was, last year.
Well, I mean, what we see is Google, in its desire for continuous improvement, is constantly sort of tweaking the algorithms to present what they believe is the best result based on the query that was received. And that's the goal of Google is, did it answer the question or did it give you the best resource that, that they could? And they look at their own internal metrics because if they present a resource and people don't click on it, then it tells Google that wasn't the right answer, right? So part of this also is, how does your response perform, especially if you're doing ads or something like that. So if you have an ad and people don't click on it because your messaging is wrong or something like that, Google will downgrade it regardless of how much you pay. It's just not going to rank. So, part of this is, in Google's ultimate desire to deliver the right content at the right time, that is something that you will have to play with and check because Google will push and promote the content that people want to click on.
So let's talk for a second about the quality of keywords, because a lot of people are just so confused about this. Keywords seem to be a little bit difficult for people to think about because it's kind of like a reverse engineering. What is the problem that you solve and what What service are you providing for people, and what words would they use to find you? So let's talk about the quality of keywords. You might have some great keywords, but if they're not the right ones, they're not going to work.
Yeah, so I mean, keywords are irrelevant because it's really about what is it that you are solving for your audience. So and one of the best ways to understand what your audience is looking for is to use Google for that very point. So when you do a search query, Google will present some ads. It'll present some organic responses, and then somewhere about mid-page, it's going to present a series of questions. And these questions are around the keyword or the topic that you asked about, right? So one of the things that we do when we're exploring a new topic is we'll put the topic in Google and then go down and see what people are looking for and what people are asking about. Right. So that gives us some insight into, and Google will phrase it the way that they entered it. So that will give us some insight as to what they're asking about this topic and the words that they're using around these topics. So, we as a rule try not to start off with, keyword first. Like keyword's an afterthought. We'll figure that out later, right? We'll have a topic, we'll look at Google, we'll figure out like what are the questions that people are asking? Are they relative to what we're trying to talk about? If they are, we're going to write articles answering the very questions that people are asking on Google.
That is fantastic insight. I'm so aware of seeing those questions, and that usually seems to be one of the most effective places to start when you're doing a Google search on something. Yeah,
Yeah, I
that's all.
mean, it's what the audience is asking. So, if you want to know what people are talking about, look on Google. They can tell you. And there's other tools too for trending and those types of activities. But it's right there on the homepage of the Google search page.
Right. Yeah. It seems to me so many of my clients right now are going through a huge transition, and they've just lost touch with what it is that they're actually doing and getting back to some of those basic questions. They're so used to answering the same question that they haven't shifted to the new one and are wondering why things aren't, am I going in the wrong direction? No, you're not going in the wrong direction. Maybe, but we don't know that yet because you just haven't attracted the right people to answer that question.
I mean, there's a function of that. The other thing is the content's just not that relevant. We're working with a client this morning, and I'm like, so they worked on their website. They've been working on it a while. We've been giving them some feedback. We've been giving them some feedback that they've chosen not to incorporate, right? And so we're doing a website review with them and talking about this, and I'm like, there's no value proposition, right? So there's no, I love value propositions, right? So there's no value proposition. There's no use cases. And there, just some of the really basic things that we should have on our websites. There's no capability statement. So, you can have a very pretty website and, you can figure out all the right keywords, but the content is lacking. The content is lacking. People don't care. So for us, go back to the basics, like you suggested, is like, what's the value proposition? Why should I buy from you? Why are you a differentiator from the 6 other options that I have in the market, right? What are some use cases? What have you done in the past that's relevant to what I'm looking at, so I can get a sense of what you've done and what you've accomplished? Some of these really basic kind of concepts, if it doesn't matter if the keywords are right, because if once you get them there, you have to keep them interested, or you have to really answer or deliver on the messaging, because I can drive traffic to a website. That doesn't mean I'm going to convert them. So part of this maybe is talking about conversion, is making sure that once you go through all the effort to get them to come to your homepage, that the information there and the content is compelling enough for them to take whatever the next action is that you want them to take.
For that specific target audience, not the
Correct.
last one that you served.
No, and and that's could be a moving target, or you may have multiple buyer personas, so you may have to create content based on this persona and content based on another persona, and that's really where you go back to basics, right? It's like basic marketing, basic, sales and everything, you can do all kinds of fancy SEO, but if the basic content is lacking, you're not going to convert. And that's the ultimate goal, right? The ultimate goal is to convert, whether it's through SEO content, whatever strategy, you're currently deploying, your ultimate goal is still to convert.
Right. So I'm going to present a little scenario to you that came to me through one of my friends. I have a friend who he has a very slight
friend scenario. Okay, yeah, let's go.
Yes. Yeah. Well, this one's interesting. He has a slight disability. And so if he goes on vacation, and he's in love with Airbnbs, and a lot of time in an Airbnb, there's a lot of steps involved. So he did a search using Chat GPT to find Airbnbs along the California coast from, Santa Clara up, that he wouldn't have to use a lot of stairs. And within a couple of seconds, he got 15 different choices. And he told ChatGPT he wanted the address and the phone number for these, just a link to how to find them on a map. Within 10 minutes, he had booked one. Now, to me, that is it's mind-boggling that something like ChatGPT can do something like that. And what he said was, no ads, no sponsored anything, no questions, no jazz, just the answer, which is very different than what you get from Google.
But that's where Google is moving towards.
So
Google will move towards that as well. Yeah, because that is what we want. We don't want ads. We don't want all that kind of stuff. So, and Google understands that. So, where I talked earlier about Google keeping you on their page for as long as possible, is Google wants to do the same thing, right? Google's goal is to answer the question that you asked on Google, right? The difference may be is the Chat GPT gave him some contact information that he probably had to go look somewhere else to validate, to find the website. Google will have given them the link to go right to the booking website and make that.
Right.
So, while, he's impressed that there are no ads, the reality is you probably would have wanted the links. They probably would have made his life a little, like, instead of being 10 minutes, it might have been 7. So, the reality is the link would have been nice. Right.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. So, because it's new and because it's a new experience, we're impressed with the fact that it didn't show ads. The reality is, and it also didn't show any links. So then we had to do more work on our own. Whereas had that been on Google, we could have, and Google moves towards this natural language response. Google would have included the link and you would have gone directly to the link and booked it. So his 10 minutes would have been less.
Yeah. Interesting. So do you think that search engines are responding to AI and incorporating it? But
yeah, of course. Google isn't where Google is by not paying attention, right? They may be a little slow in the rollout, and some of their products may not be, like, I don't know if anybody's using Bard, so so they may not be there, but that may be a conscious decision, right? Where they may be like, let them work out the kinks and the bugs and all that kind of problem before we deploy it on our system. But Google has clearly announced that they will use generative AI, right? So, and Google's desire is to have a natural language sounding response to your inquiries, because what we ultimately desire is this kind of dialogue. Hey Google, show me this, and hey Siri, show me that. And the ability to sort of talk in our language, have it understand that, and to feed back things that we will understand. So, Google has announced that they plan to incorporate generative AI. Google, if you have been paying attention over the years, you can see how the real estate on their search page has changed. You can see how a lot of it is designed to keep you on Google versus going somewhere else. That will continue. I think that your friends, sort of reaction to, less ads or no ads you know, is, Google is aware of that. Nobody loves ads. No one's happy with it. But at the same time, we want convenience. So, we really like it gave us the information. Now we got to go put it, we still end up putting it in Google to find that information. So Google will have it all in one place
Good
and
point.
provide you the link. Yeah.
So interesting. So interesting. So what you're kind of saying is that Google will become a much more user-friendly experience in the future.
I mean, I don't know that Google is not, I mean, compared to everything else, it's still a user-friendly experience. I mean, most of
A
us will,
platform for search.
yeah, I mean, most of us click on the one or two answers at the top and get to where we want to be. It does what it's supposed to do. And so I think Google is, relatively user-friendly. I think Google's will move towards this more of a conversational chat type of inquiry. Hey Google, what's going on here? And that's always been the goal, I think, of voice search, right? Hey Siri, find me a car. Hey Google, find me a place, an Airbnb within the parameters that you mentioned, and tell me what to look for. So, that's how has always been the intent of voice search is, I want to have a conversation. We have a nice lady at the other end of, Siri at the other end who responds, like, hey Siri, turn on the radio. Hey Siri, turn off the lights, right? So we're just like having a conversation.
Right.
So that's, that will feel more and more like natural language. And that's everyone's goal is to get to the point where it's just like natural language. Like we're not even on Chat GPT, that's not a natural language. We make an inquiry, it responds, but we're not having a dialogue. And ultimate natural language will be a dialogue. We will ask it for something and they'll say, hey, I don't quite understand what that means. Can you and there'll be a little bit back and forth to make sure we get you to the right place. That is the ultimate search, is to have feel like you had a dialogue with somebody. Because that's how we do it in real life. You and I, hey Angela, can you give me a resource for, do you know somebody? And you're like, well, I do, but are you looking for this or are you looking for that? Right? You'll probably ask me a few, clarifying
Qualifying questions. Yep.
right? To make sure that what I'm asking for and where you want to route me are in the right place. So that's the kind of language that we're expecting to see as generative AI continues to be incorporated in search.
So this search function is going to become more interesting in the next 6 months, a year, 3 years.
It's going to evolve. It has evolved. It continues to evolve. It will always continue to evolve. I think the thing about search is it'll become more and more omnipresent. Right? We can search on our phones. We can search. Like how many of us have done something and all of a sudden Siri kicks in? You're like, I didn't even know she was listening. Right? Like I've had that all the time. Where they'll pop something up. So it's going to be more omnipresent, you know what I mean? And it'll be less about sitting in front of a computer and typing an inquiry into Google. It's going to be hey, either on my phone or on some sort of, Bluetooth device, I'm going to be hey, pull up pizza restaurants within the, 5 miles. And it's going to well, do you want it with toppings or without? It's going to start asking me questions.
Deep dish or
deep
ultra
dish,
thin.
So that kind of thing. So, but I just think search is going to become omnipresent, right?
So interesting. So we've run through all of my questions. Mike, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience?
It's kind of interesting. We went in a different direction than I usually go, but I think some of the bottom line things, maybe to summarize, some of the bottom line things is SEO is one tool and within many, including content marketing, social media, paid search, but it's one tool. It's a very important tool because it helps us create visibility, especially in places like Google, but it's a tool amongst others. SEO alone won't close the deal, won't convert if your content isn't there. So you need to make sure that you have the basics, whether it's a value proposition statement, capacity statement, use cases, whatever your client is expecting or wants to see. And then, last week we sort of talked about the types of things to run from, and really the thing about SEO is this is a long-term play and investment. It won't happen overnight. Google will, take time to recognize you. It needs to get more and more input, whether it's building links or generating content. So it's going to be a long-term play. And if anybody tells you they're going to rank you tomorrow, don't waste your time and don't waste your money.
That's very good advice. I know there's a lot of the people in the coaching industry that have said, with links that they're going to get you to the top of blah, blah, blah right away. And what was our topic last week? If marketers say
Exactly. Well, I mean,
XYZ.
I can rank you for the #1 spot, but the question is whether or not it's for a keyword that your audience is interested in, right? I can use some really long tail obscure keyword and surely can get you up to the #1 spot. So, they can do that, but those may not be keywords that your audience is interested in, or keywords that your audience, or questions that your audience will ever put into the query search for Google. So again, we definitely like using those questions in Google and base our responses to meet those questions, because we know that's what they're looking for.
And the sustainability of it is another question too. How long can you keep that #1 spot?
I mean, yeah, this is, a living process, right? Because, having achieved it doesn't mean that you will stay there, because then once it's up there, it needs to perform and people need to click on it. There's so many factors that are going to influence that. So, you're just not done. And I know people who pay SEO folks don't want to hear that. It's not a set it and forget it. It's an ongoing process.
Right. And it plays so nicely into other topics like content, like having the right value proposition, like having a really strong personal and professional brand. It plays into a lot of different things.
I mean, bottom line, I think it comes down to transparency, right? Your clients are looking to understand you, and they're looking to understand what you offer, and they have other options. So, the more information that you can provide that's relevant versus volume. We're not talking about just volume. We were earlier, but now we're not. It's not just volume. It's about making sure that you're addressing what they're looking for. Make sure it's in the language that they are, either can understand or that they are searching and using. One of the biggest problems that we see is that a lot of our clients who are technical will use technical jargon. And this is not anything that anybody's going to search for because they don't know it yet. And that also gets back to like branding, because if you have some obscure name, no one's going to, no one's going to search for that. So, in order to create brand awareness, we need to have some elements that people are looking for and that people recognize.
I think that sounds like a great topic for next week. What do you think, Mike?
Can you clarify what the topic for what that was? Because I just said a bunch of stuff. So clarify what is our topic for
brand
next week?
awareness is the one that really captured my attention, because it's part of this whole visibility. It's part of the whole recognition piece. And even SEO is a part of visibility. It's visibility on the internet.
It's a tool amongst a toolbox full of tools, because you and I both live on and offline. So, we have, and we say this all the time, this omni-channel approach, but, you need your online to match your offline to support your online. If this all sort of needs to be, a whole program or solution that's just independent of what platform you're on, whether it's in person, online, Instagram, LinkedIn, wherever it is, it should work and it should support your other platforms.
So let's talk next week about building a consistent in-person and online brand awareness.
Sounds good to me.
Awesome.
It was a pleasure as always. We will see you next week. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments below and we will try to address them in future episodes.
Sounds great.